Welcome to the Prolific Pulse Poetry Podcast and YouTube. This is your host, Lisa Tomei. I am really excited today. I have Michael Poage with us, and believe it or not, we're going to welcome him as a podcast virgin because this is his first time to do a podcast. So, yay! Welcome. We'll get you broke into podcasting. You'll be doing it all the time. So welcome to the show. Podcast. We're really happy to have you here today.
Thanks, Lisa. It's an honor and a new adventure.
There
So,
you go. Now, I understand you have traveled all over, not just the United States, but in other countries as well. You've been a very, very busy man. And I was reading in your biography about, you've had some involvement with social justice and making an impact in that way. I'd love to hear about that. That's one of my favorite topics. I wonder if you could share with us a little bit about your involvement with social justice causes.
sure. I think my mother was my first social justice teacher, and she didn't really know that, but in many ways, she taught me the ways of social justice. And my father was in the Marine Corps, so he wasn't so much into into that. But throughout my life since I was 20, and basically it was 1967 and 1968 with the assassinations of Dr. King in April of '68, and then 2 months later, Bobby Kennedy in LA. And I was in LA at that time, actually. I had just dropped out of grad school and was still in LA, and Kennedy was killed. And then the Vietnam War was heating up. And I actually was in seminary. Graduate school was seminary. And seminarians at that time we were all given what's called a 4D classification, which is a divinity school deferment. Mm-hmm. And after reading a lot about Dietrich Bonhoeffer and the Confessing Church in Germany during the Third Reich, doing a lot of reading, talking to some professors, I decided that the 4D divinity deferment really was not right. It was unfair to the rest of my friends who didn't have that kind of deferment and were getting drafted and going to Vietnam and fighting. So I surrendered the 4D classification and let my draft board know. And then I began a process of trying to be classified as a conscientious objector. Mm-hmm. And I wasn't part of a peace church. I wasn't even part of a church, actually. But I gathered all the materials together. I got references and did my homework, put a portfolio together, and then had a 2-year battle with my draft board, which was in San Diego. And the San Diego draft board wasn't real open to conscientious objectors either, since it's highly lots of military presence there. So eventually I was given, because my wife had a baby in 1970, and we were headed for Canada, actually, and we got to Montana. We stayed with some friends for a little bit, and I got word that I'd been given a hardship deferment. But it was really because there were hundreds, tens of hundreds of people in the same position in the courts. So, but then I went to Montana, stayed there for 12 years, and I got my Master of Fine Arts in creative writing there with Richard Hugo and Madeline DeFries. It's a great writing program.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. But I didn't know anything about it actually. I was writing poems, but I really wasn't part of a writing community. I was I was a, I was and still am really kind of a loner. Um, and to cut it a little bit shorter, I ended up going back to seminary, and not with the idea of becoming a local church pastor, but I wanted to go to I wanted to get my master's of divinity, study theology, and study what I really loved was studying the languages, Aramaic and Hebrew and Greek. I love that part of it. And then I love the social justice part of it. And I worked in Oakland, California, at a downtown church for a year. It was a kind of internship, although it wasn't a paid internship. But I worked with the mayor, the city council. It was a wonderful opportunity with the school district. And Oakland at that time, was very, very dangerous, actually. Gangs and so forth, and lots of violence, lots of gang shootings, lots of all kinds of violence. And I ended up working with a junior high school that was the second English as second language junior high school for the city of Oakland, and we shared a parking lot with the school and the church. So when they came out for lunch, I would go over and just talk to the students, and they were from all over the world. And then I ended up. I wanted to go to graduate school in a non-Western university. So I really wanted to go to the University of Durban in South Africa, place I'd never been before. I'd never been out of the country, and I wanted a non-Western approach to theology as well as liberation theology, and that whole realm, that whole world. But I needed a scholarship to do that. From the seminary that I was attending, I was told by the committee members secretly that I was a shoo-in. I had the highest GPA. Anyway, I didn't get it. So I ended up needing to get a job, and ended up in the middle of the United States in Kansas. And I served three United Church of Christ churches here in Kansas. So for 25 years, I served here. And people said, "Why did you go to Kansas?" And I said, Kansas is a great place to be subversive because people don't pay that much attention to what you're doing. Unless it's gossipy kind of stuff. That's different. So I became the director of our Peace and Justice Task Force here in Kansas for Kansas and Oklahoma. That was our region. And we started working on all kinds of justice issues, from even just basic education about Soweto and South Africa, because the churches in Kansas, for the most part, didn't know much about the rest of the world. It's kind of like our citizenry. I mean, our population in the United States doesn't know much about the rest of the world. What I've found is the rest of the world knows a whole lot more about the United States and politics of the U.S. and literature of the U.S., especially music and films of the U.S., because they learn English that way. And so we started working on issues of racism, even out here on the plains, issues of the recession. There was a major recession going on in 1985 when I first started working in a church here in Kansas. 40% of the land in our county was under was about to go under, basically, owned by the banks, foreclosure, and so we tried to get the church involved in those kinds of issues, in the racism, in the agricultural economy, basically, and agribusiness versus the smaller farms. LGBTQ issues, we were working on that. And then I became, in addition to the director of the Peace and Justice Task Force, I became director of the youth, the youth of Kansas and Oklahoma. And it was a perfect mix. And I got myself, I won't take all the credit. There were other people with me who got these kids excited about social justice issues. I mean, if you want somebody to speak out, get some youth, get some 15, 16, 17-year-old students. And one quick example of that, we had a national youth event, 2,000 kids in Columbia, South Carolina, which at that time had the Confederate flag flying from the state capitol as well as the U.S. flag. And there was a movement by the NAACP to get that removed.
Right.
Well, we wrote up a resolution, we being the youth of Kansas and Oklahoma, and presented it to the plenary, the whole group, 2,000 of them, and that became that was adopted as one of our resolutions. So, the youth kind of fed me, and I kind of fed them. We worked together on these things, and we had at this same meeting, we had a press conference. Now I was arranging all this stuff on the side because I wanted the youth to really take responsibility for it,
Right.
and I didn't want it to be fake responsibility. So the youth leader of our contingent, he got to be the spokesperson at this press conference. And he and I had a talk, and before then, and I kind of told him what it might be like. And we were under a big tent, a huge tent, held about 1,000 people, and he got up on the stage. We had a little stage there, and he got up and spoke in front of. He was actually from Oklahoma. The number of people under that tent were the number was more than the town he was from, the population of his hometown in Oklahoma. So we worked on issues of the Confederate flag, and this was back in 1996, and so that's how we kind of, and then I started internationally in 2000, and I started going to Bosnia. Bosnia and Herzegovina is the full name. And I was just drawn to the country. I really don't know why. I have a couple of theories, but it was a country that went through a horrible series of wars, really, in the early 1990s.
Right.
And I followed the wars closely. And in July of 2000, my wife and I were in Latvia at the time teaching, and I decided I was going to go to Bosnia, and I got a ticket and I went just by myself, and I didn't know anybody there in Sarajevo. That was my destination, and but I quickly met a couple of people, and from different NGOs in the city and in the country, and then I just started. It was just a wonderful merger, of my desire to be present.
Right.
It's what I call a critical presence, uh, not in terms of judgmentalism or
Right.
judging, uh, but an important presence. And then I just started working with different agencies, uh, volunteering, um, orchard restoration, uh, fruit and uh, rakia. Rakia is the it's the drink of Bosnia and Herzegovina. It's 80 proof,
Oh.
but it's a really powerful brandy actually. And so the country's economy relies uh, on the orchards, the fruit orchards. So, and a lot of them were torn up and destroyed during the wars. So
Right.
everything from that to teaching English to working with imams in the Srebrenica area, uh, which was a place where 8,000 Muslim men and boys were massacred um, in July of 95. Um, and then their graves, um, there were primary graves, and then the Serbs came in and dug those graves up, and there were secondary graves, and it just desecrating the burials, desecrating what was left of the bodies, and then tertiary graves to really make it almost impossible for family members to identify their dead relatives. Um, so I just kept going back to Bosnia, and I've been there 10 times now since 2000. Um, the last 3 years has been to teach, um, uh, and we taught at a Muslim university in Mostar, which is in the Herzegovina or southern part of Bosnia. Uh, After I retired, I went to university. I got my graduate certificate in teaching English as a second language. So I started a new career, and but my youngest daughter says, "Dad, you didn't retire, you refired."
Well, that's
So
okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay to have. I've reinvented myself a few times in my life as well.
yeah, right. Yeah, me too. I mean, the career of 25 years in one place is very unusual for me.
Well,
um,
underlying all of this experience that you've had, you wrote several. How many books of poetry has it been now?
13.
13.
Mhm.
In those books of poetry, have you recorded your experiences of life
Some,
in your
some,
poetry?
yes, um, some, especially of Bosnia, uh, uh, and well, and Mexico, because I started in 1995 taking youth and adults to Tijuana, to the Tijuana area of,
Mm-hmm.
of uh, Mexico and northern Mexico, and we worked in the colonias, the poorest colonias on the outskirts of Tijuana. So I've written some about that. And I don't know if you have heard of Luis Alberto Arrea, but he's a great writer, poet, prose. He's from Tijuana, actually, and that's a meeting point for the two of us. And he's written two really good books that are nonfiction prose about the colonias and about Tijuana and that area. One's called Across the Wire, and the other is called By the Lake of Sleeping Children. And they're really interesting. So
yeah.
But anyway, so I've been Mexico, Gaza. I spent some time in Gaza, the Gaza Strip, and Palestine, West Bank, and some other places, Kosovo, as well as Bosnia and Herzegovina. Yeah. So my heart, though, Bosnia and Herzegovina is shaped like the human heart, only like a fist, only not a clenched fist, but a slightly open fist. And whenever I do a presentation on Bosnia, I always point that out.
Right.
Most people don't know anything about Bosnia or know where it is even. A lot of people, it's in Africa, or it's in an island off of Norway or something. But it's actually at the heart of Europe. Really important. But yes, some of my writing, I have brought in some of those experiences. Yes.
Wonderful. Now this, I'm going to share my screen, but I'll talk about it as well for podcasters to know.
Okay.
You have a website, michaelpoage.com, and I'll include that in the show notes.
Thank you.
You have your latest poetry book called You Must Have Your Famine. Came out in just January this year. Wow, congratulations.
Thank you
tell
very
us
much.
about this book. Well, what's this about?
This book, it's interesting when people ask me what one of my books is about. Usually there's no single theme.
I get that.
I don't arrange the poems chronologically or thematically, usually. I do that. I put similar poems in the same chapters sometimes, or the same parts, chapters. For instance, in You Must Have Your Famine, there's part 2 is called Scottish Prayer Book, which my wife and I have spent quite a bit of time in Scotland, on the north coast of Scotland, right on the little town called Portsoy, and it's in between the Highlands on the west and Aberdeen on the east. It's right in the middle. It's wonderful. But so I put all of these poems, and part 2, Scottish Prayer Book, are related to Scotland, or Scotland experience. And other than that, I'm just looking at the poems. I'm going to take part of what I said back. When I look at the poems, I like to arrange them so that they kind of know each other. I mean, sort of the poems are familiar with each other, which might sound a little weird. No, good. I don't remember my poems, so whenever I open a book, like even the latest one, I think, oh, I wrote that because
I do that.
the,
Yeah.
okay, well, I see them as friends,
Hmm.
you know, and I see them as friends of each other, and but
Right.
also as a kind of community, um, which has been my whole life has been um, working on what Martin Luther King called the beloved community.
Hmm.
Um, I, I, I believe that each of the books is a community of poems.
I like that. I like that analogy. It's like you open it up and you're opening up to that community of your world. This is that section of the community that you want to talk about. What inspired the title of the book?
Yeah, I've had a lot of questions about that. The title of the book is actually a title of one of the poems in the book.
Okay.
And to be honest, I was just intrigued with the title. And I don't know where it came from. Um, I, Probably some time when I was sitting here at my desk with my um, writer's notebook, or with my, it's actually a Walgreens notebook
Hmm. Best kind.
from the drugstore. And yeah, and somehow those words
Mhm.
came together. And then a poem out of that as well. Um, as I thought about it, though, too, um, there's a part of, to me at least, when I think about my life, um, and I've seen quite a bit of both tragedy and joy from different national perspectives, different linguistic perspectives. Um, I mean, the language in different countries is incredible to study, and I'm really poor at learning languages, but I love the study of them.
Hmm.
And um, there's a part of me that believes that capitalism thrives on famines, and that, I mean, I'm talking about real world famines because we make money on it. The, the most, the real capitalist countries, of which the United States is prime example,
Hmm.
I think feeds off of the famines politically, economically. Um, and so part of me says and believes and thinks that the my country, which I've thought about leaving, but I mean permanently, but my country feeds off of the famine. So it says to the world, you must have your famine, or I won't survive, or I won't have the kind of life I'm used to living. If you don't have your famine, if you don't, if Darfur, which is now kicking up again um, with violence and revolution, um, then we won't be able to sell you guns. That's which is a um, primary job for the U.S. around the world is to arm the world. So if you have a famine, chances are then there'll be a revolution. Chances are then you're going to need weapons, and we can work out a deal. With weapons, we can send you some food, but it's going to cost you. Um, and we can't spare that much, but we can spare a little bit just to keep enough to keep you alive. So it's some of part of it is a kind of a bitter. There's a bitter taste in the
Hmm.
title. Um, to me, part of it is also very real, um, capturing a very real uh, process in our between the capitalist countries, the wealthy countries, and the vast number of um, what we call developing countries.
Right.
But they're developing because they depend on Western money. That's my thinking, at least after 50 some odd years of working.
Well, in famine, that one word can take on so many. That one word is a poetry book or books.
Yeah.
What one word to inspire many poems and many pieces of any essays.
Yeah, and you can have emotional famine also, which I think we rely on as well. I mean, and then you can also get more personal if you look at it in an emotional way. Then the poems can be and are more personal and talk about more intimate details or events or circumstances, whether it's mine or somebody else's.
Right.
A lot of people also ask, a lot of my poems are dark. I don't know why folks are concerned about that. It seems to be almost be a criticism from people.
There's room for darkness in poetry.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a way to get that darkness into understanding, being understood, I guess is a better way to put it, being understood. So
yeah,
that's, and then my publisher and editor and layout person put the piece of fabric on the cover. And at first I didn't like it. And then one night when I was trying to fall asleep, I thought, that is actually a great cover for that book in terms of you must have your famine. If you look at Yemen, you look at the clothes people are wearing, or Myanmar, almost anywhere. I mean, it just fit both the emotional and the realism of you must have your family.
Right. Now, do you have some poetry to share today?
Yes. Sarah sent me an email saying that she sent you 3 poems.
She did.
Okay. You mind if I read those?
Yes, go right ahead. Absolutely. I was hoping you would.
Okay. All right. The first one that I'll read is called The Spider. And it's one of those that's, it's a pretty personal one. Here goes. The Spider. You make it sound so easy. Then you change your mind and bring the argument into focus from a different angle. You don't notice the black spider walking along the edge of your coffee cup. The discussion continues, mostly on the literary merits of a full stop. But you forget about the war around us, the anger and fear, striking like lightning ourselves and our neighbors. The world knows nothing, cares less. You could put your hands gently on the side of my face, only for the sake of affection. The spider is oblivious, spins a web across your cup.
Wow, that says so much.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. This was one of the poems that when I stumbled across it after the book was published, I thought, I wrote that? When did I write that? I don't remember. And up there, the second poem is called Tiger, Tiger. What is intimate to you is only what gets caught in your teeth. It takes practice to do what you do with such skill. The play with siblings in childhood, baking a throat grab, then a sharp snap at the rump, is only a prelude to the love of the kill that will come sooner than I ever imagined. You're down on your stomach in the brown grass with more patience than you can keep hidden. You move toward your prey before your instinct would allow you, so you know it's a mistake from the start. I see what you are doing, so I lunge out of the reach of your lecherous, poor excuse for claws, attack, and you tumble away, out of view, over the steep cliff, dropping out the window on the 20th floor, and land on the pavement, the sweet savanna, twisted and contorted in more erotic ways than you can picture. On the pavement, the sweet savanna.
Whew. Another powerful one.
Thank you. This is one of the a poem when I've had good friends who have read my poems say, you know, I read your poems. I don't understand them, but I'm glad you're writing them. Another poem, the third one here, called Lies I've Heard or Told. To give you a kind of heads up here, this is basically a list of lies I've heard or told. Okay. I love you. I hate you. We are now in Iraq. There are WMDs in Iraq, so we must invade. No, there isn't someone else. Yes, you get the children as often as I do. We've landed on the moon. Algebra is easy. I was at the library studying. You're making this into something it's not. You have beautiful legs. I don't miss my dead parents. You look 20 years younger than that. You look 10 years younger than him. You look great. The bottled water is better for you than tap. I feel great. Every joint in my body hurts. Yes, you get the children as often as I do. Trust me.
I read that earlier, and I read it a couple of times, to really get a good grasp on that. And I thought, there are so many truths in that poem, lies we tell and what lies we tell ourselves too.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I literally I just sat down, and this was a quick poem to write. Although I didn't put a title on it, I don't think, for a while. I just had the idea of lies, and um, lies and maybe truths, but mostly lies. So those are the three
Thank you.
poems that you were
Thank you.
saying. Yes.
Appreciate you sharing those. Well, Michael, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you would like to share?
I really just deeply appreciate the opportunity to be on your show. I'm really glad you're doing this.
Well, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah, and it's you know, art is so important in so many other countries, and in so many other countries they have statues to painters of painters in parks, or poets in parks, or at a street intersection. You know, there's a statue of a writer. We don't do much of that. We salute our generals, and I would just hope that this idea of the beloved community would somehow catch on.
Yeah, me too.
And more so now than ever.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I do is just kind of fell into it. Is I don't know if it's serendipity or what, but I met a young poet. She's 13 now, from Nigeria,
Oh,
and I have been mentoring her and editing her work and doing some work with her father. Both of them are writers.
oh, great.
Um, and I was introduced to them by a friend who has also been doing work with them.
Hmm.
And what I have come from that with is an awareness of what is really precious. I mean, I thought I had a pretty good idea what is precious in life, but when
Hmm.
you hear things from the point of view from someone who's in a country where it's a lot different than what we're used to here, I mean, we're pretty spoiled.
Yes.
And, you know, it has been probably just as enriching to me being her mentor and an editor as it is, maybe for her to get to benefit from that. But it's just taught me some things, a different kind of appreciation. And so I think that we have to sometimes step out of our comfort zone, cross
Yes.
some borders, um, get in touch more and more with other people.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
you know,
That's great. I'm glad you're doing that. It must be really fun too.
it is, and I'm an editor for one of for Fine Lines, and I help them get some of their work in there. So
Mhm.
I just it feels good when I see their name in print. So
Yeah.
and
You know,
see that.
I teach English, so I got a Fulbright for this year and next year, teaching English right now virtually. Um, but I was so happy again at 75 to get a Fulbright to teach, and and they needed somebody with a literature background in Thailand. I didn't even think about Thailand, but right now I am teaching virtually at a university in southern Thailand,
Well,
and
great.
teaching English literature and language. And
Mm,
it is what you said about learning um, from your student. You're getting more out of
mhm,
that experience than you're giving. Uh, that's what I feel is that
mhm,
in teaching their kids, but they're university students. In teaching them, I learn much more than I teach. I mean, every night. I mean, because of the time difference, I have classes from 10 here from 10 p.m. until midnight, sometimes 10 till 1. So I start to get a little wacky after a while, but but they enjoy that and they can make fun of me. And this is the first time they have ever done a virtual classroom. So it's been really, really interesting. And I might have a chance to go there and teach in country, which would be really interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
So
good luck to you. That sounds great. Well,
thank,
thank you so much, Michael, for coming on here today.
thank you for the invitation. That
I wish
really
lots
great.
of safety and beautiful words for you in the future.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right. You too.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.